Hey everybody, I'm Ron Gagliardi. I'm the host of 30 Minutes with Ron. I'd like to welcome all my viewers tonight. We have a really great show for you. "30 Minutes with Ron." Hello, I'm Ron Gagliardi. I'm the host of 30 Minutes with Ron. It's been a while since we've actually done some taping, so please excuse me if I happen to have a little problem. I do have a problem that I want to deal with, however. I've been watching some of the pundits on television, the interviewers and all those folks that supposedly know what they're doing. I think they're doing some things that are a little bit off. So I'm going to give them some advice, and then we're going to see this wonderful guest over here. First of all, I think they should book guests on both sides of issues, make it balanced. Some of them do, but not all. They should end the show with a summary, don't sum up during it. There are people who interrupt guests frequently. They should not do that. It's not polite. They should keep questions short. There are some folks that do these soliloquies before the person even gets a chance to answer anything. When they have multiple guests, sometimes they argue and they interrupt each other, and that's not polite either. So they should shut the mic off of the person who's not talking. And that way, nobody hears them. I believe they should organize the questions to present the easiest questions to answer first, and then get into the more progressively hard ones later. And I think the question should be done in order beforehand. Let the guests know a little bit about what you're going to talk about. And I think the thank yous should be exchanged off-air after the interview. And you should welcome the subject off-air prior to the interview. You're wasting precious seconds. They probably cost like 10 grand a second. And yes or no questions. If somebody gives a yes or no question and the person doesn't answer with a yes or no, interview over. So there. So watch out, Jerry. All right, enough said. This person over here is a person named Jerry O'Neill. And I don't know Jerry really well. I met him first a couple years ago at Dodd Middle School, where he was working with a student there. And then he came over to Cheshire High School, where I spend a lot of time subbing and tutoring. And I got to know him a little better, and I found out some amazing things about him. One of the most amazing things are some whistles that he does, but we're going to save those till later. Hopefully we'll have time. Otherwise, you'll just have to call him up, have him whistle in your phone. So welcome, Jerry O'Neill.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks
for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I hear that there was some kind of an air show that you were supposed to be at, and now you're here.
Yeah. We do the Lancaster, California show, which is the LA County Air Show in March, and I'm not there. But my guys are, so I'm not.
Yes, now let's explain this exactly. Now, in addition to being a person who's done video and commercials and also works at the high school, you have a company. Tell us about this company.
Yeah, it's Airedale's Flight Line Operations, and they hire us to handle aircraft ground operations at air shows across the country. Been doing it for 26 years. I can't believe they pay us to do it, but we go there, and simple terms is it's the guys who do this stuff. More broad terms, we're more choreography, and it's not. That's the smallest part of it. Mm-hmm. During a show, we're a communication link, and we've got to know how these things operate, what kind of support equipment they need. It's not just okay, park the airplane, we're done. Right. There's a lot involved, and a lot of pre-planning, because we also pre-plan the ramp, where things are going, how you're going to get in and out, because you've got what I call the big elephants, like a C-5 Galaxy, which is these huge transports. You only got one chance to park them. Little jets, little airplanes, you can kind of move around a couple of times, and we have tow bars. You don't have a tow bar for that thing. No. So that has that sets the tone, and you've got to know how to handle that.
So now you mentioned the term Airedales. So that's the name of your company.
Yes.
And it's also a term.
Yes, it is.
Term for?
It's actually, we were looking for a name instead of just Flight Line Operation Company or anything like that. So I decided that look into history and see what was up, and it's the nickname of all the guys who do the same thing on an aircraft carrier. Mm-hmm. Since before World War II, they were nicknamed Airedales because they're running around like crazy. It's spelled different than the Airedale dog, yep. But that's kind of where the name comes from, and it would just it clicked and it worked.
So now you are the only person I have ever encountered who is in charge of air shows. Are there lots of companies that do air shows?
Oh, there's quite a few, yeah. And I actually have produced a few, a couple in Connecticut, Veteran Salute in Hartford in 2008, and a couple of Corsair shows down in Bridgeport over the years. Most air events in Connecticut I've been involved with since 1985 in some way or another. Mm-hmm. it's just the way it worked out. And I'm an aviation guy. I've been a pilot since '78, and it just I love it. And once you know what you're doing, I'm a very spatially oriented guy. But I really like the ground ops. The producing's a bit much because everybody's coming at you, different ways, and you've got to soothe everybody. An airport is not a theater venue. There's federal regulations, there's local town regulations, there's the local fire chiefs, the health inspector comes because you've got food on the field. You just can't believe it, what's involved, and that's not as much fun. There's more money in it. I'm not in it for the money.
You're having fun.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were a pilot. That's
Yes.
news to me.
Yeah. Sold in July 22nd, '78. Yep.
Big important
For
day.
a long time. Yep. I highly recommend it for anybody. It's just great. It's expensive, but it's great.
Yeah. Gas.
Yeah. Well, I haven't flown. I haven't flown in a couple of years. I'm not current, what they call. You have to do a certain number of takeoffs and landings in 90 days for the FAA, and since I'm just doing it for fun, I don't need to spend $145 an hour to rent a plane.
Right.
But I fly with other friends and stuff like that. It just, when my ship comes in, maybe I'll buy an airplane. Unfortunately, I'll probably be at the airport and I'll miss the ship.
Well, I'm so glad you brought it in that way because your ship did come in.
It did come
or at
in.
least you came into the ship.
Yeah, kind of.
I saw this article in the Cheshire Herald. It was like a script for a movie. And I read this thing and I said, I know Jerry O'Neill, and this is talking about something that he did that very few people get to do. Tell us, Jerry.
Well, I was invited to go on a Navy embark tour, which they call Distinguished Visitors Embark Tour, on the USS Nimitz in December. And I was asked if I wanted to go. The answer was a big fat yes, almost immediately. Had to take a Monday and a Friday off from school. And basically I flew out to San Diego. The carrier was doing training ops off of San Diego. It had come out of a 2-year refit, and they spend 7-8 months getting the crew all working together as a team before they go get deployed somewhere.
Right.
So they do these DV embark tours, the Distinguished Visitors, basically for press purposes, in essence, and getting the word about the Navy out. They want you to go out and talk. So the people involved in it are invited, usually are, they're politicians, heads of industry, presidents of the Lions Club, educators, things like that. And they moved the date for this gentleman who I've known for a few years, a couple of times, and some people couldn't make the third move date. And he called me. So there I was. So I had to fly out to San Diego, spend the night. We all got on a Navy C-2 Greyhound. It's a turboprop twin-engine cargo. It seats about 20.
Yeah.
It's like the AWACS plane with the Navy AWACS with the dome on the top.
Oh, yeah.
Only it doesn't have the dome, and it's fatter. But it's the same basic airframe. And we flew out about an hour, about 230 knots, out to the Nimitz, and we landed. And got out on the deck, and it was another world. It was pretty amazing, even though as an aviation historian and military buff and love all that stuff, you see everything on the History Channel, Discovery Channel, Life on the Carrier. There's nothing like stepping out there. It's a 360-degree, IMAX view, and these people are out there every day doing a job that's dirty and dangerous, and they're just doing their thing. And you realize that this stuff is going on every single day all over the world. And these people, they're young crew members, they're just getting it done. And it was just stepping out of the airplane was absolutely impressive. And I've been around you. I mean, I've been crawling under jets when they're running, plugging in things at air shows. When it's screaming and you've got to pull the pins out and show the pilot and stow them away. And there's the intake, and you're standing here, and it's pretty intense. So that operation around the deck wasn't what was impressing me. It was the people and how they were working. And I've been around a lot of jets. Now, the other people I was with was 16 of us. Yeah. They were very impressed with everything. But I wasn't looking at all the jets. I've seen lots of jets. I was watching how they all worked. The choreography and the dedication was amazing.
Well, tell us about the landing, and also there's a special name for the landing.
Yeah, they call it a trap. So,
oh boy.
Well, you trap the airplane, on the deck. Not a lot of people get to do that, And unfortunately, inside the Greyhound, there's 2 windows, and they're near the tail. And in the airplane, you sit backwards. Because with a landing, you're going to be pushed into the seat.
Right.
And that's a little bit safer for everybody. There's only 2 windows. The rest are lights. So I'm in a dark tube. And I'm in the first row, which is actually parallel to the propeller, right opposite where the propeller's spinning. There's a red stripe. That's where I was sitting. And you can't see anything. And all you're doing is moving back and forth. And as a pilot, without a visual outside cue, it was really weird because we started accelerating, but accelerating down the runway felt like we were braking, to me. And once we were flying, I could tell when we got off the ground, we would take a left turn. I would feel that we're taking a right turn because I'm backwards. And it's very smooth all the way out, and you don't have a window. They don't really tell you. The only signal we were going to get was 15 seconds before landing. They were going to stand up at the back and do this, wave their hands, so we could all see it. It's pretty noisy. So all of a sudden, you hear a change in the engines, pitch. You feel the flaps come down like you do on an airliner. The slats and everything start coming down, and so you hear a pitch change. And now the airplane's doing this. And before we're nice and smooth, and I'm like, oh, we're coming down, And as you get closer, and all of a sudden you're boom, and you're down on the deck, and you're getting pushed in the seat. And I would say it was just like kind of a rough road. You're kind of banging around the seat a little bit, and then all of a sudden you stop. The takeoff was different. Catapulting off the carrier, you're facing the opposite way a pilot would sleep. So you hold on. You have shoulder harnesses. Yeah. You hold on tight, and all of a sudden it feels like a 500-pound guy jumps on your back for about 6 seconds, and you just go this way. Now, like I said, I'm facing backwards, so it's kind of weird. And then you're off again, and the rest was a piece of cake. It wasn't. I wasn't nervous at all. I was.
Oh yeah. Well,
man, it was like keyed into this thing, because this is something that wasn't. I'd have to say it wasn't even on my bucket list. Everybody has a bucket list, that might have been. Oh, I'd love to go out in a carrier. How do you do that?
Right.
It was a call from a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And there I was. It was. I wouldn't even know how to go about trying to get on a carrier.
Yeah.
Except enlisting, and I'm a little too old for that.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. But I have a small airplane story to share, because I'm sure my viewers don't know this, but I have flown an airplane, and I'm not a pilot. A friend of mine had one. He said, let's go to Block Island for lunch. I said, okay. I'd never been in his airplane. And we're going along, and he says, okay, you take over. And I, what? So I'm flying an airplane, and I thought, wow, this is interesting. Let me stop doing this. So I gave it back fairly quickly. We only had to dive twice to avoid other airplanes. And he said, gee, that never happens. I said, well, of course that would happen with me in your airplane.
Well, the planes are pretty easy. It's once you have them trimmed up to fly level, it's left and right, just like a car. And there's no street signs, so you have to kind of know where you're going. But it's a lot easier landing and taking off. That's the key thing.
Yeah.
I like myself a lot, so I'm really good at that.
Yes. I've even flown with a 14-year-old pilot.
Yeah.
That was a program, and I was in the back seat. And when they turn, they really, when you bank in a Cessna, you know you're turning.
You can get a glider license at 14, and your private pilot's license at 16, but you can't take any passenger with you at 16.
He had his teacher with him, so
you can start flying pretty young.
So now you mentioned you had some kind of an office in something with a place upstate, some, I don't know, a museum company?
Oh, no, I was a curator at the New England Air Museum for about 7 years. I've been a member since 74, I think. And when I got out of college, I said, I got to do something, So I started volunteering, and very quickly it turned out a bunch of stuff came in a box. It was donated, and it was, flying gear. It was a life vest and helmet and goggles. And I was always interested in that stuff. I have my own collection of them and things like that. And I said, well, where's that going to go? Oh, we're just going to throw it in the back of the library. I said, well, was anybody taking care of that stuff? Or no, we just, because they're not interested.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I found myself as the costume curator. And it sounds like you're at Costume Bazaar selling Halloween costumes, but it's not. That's the official term in the museum industry about flight gear, any kind of clothes, anything you would wear or carry onto an airplane came under my realm. So I was in charge of all that. But what was really interesting was that because I was a curator, I was also on the curatorial committee. So we were involved in quite a lot of decisions on 25-year restoration plans, what we wanted to do, planes we wanted to acquire, why we wanted to acquire. We'd have to argue about it. And even though I was the costume curator, I was involved in these discussions on do we want to get rid of this airplane? Why do we need it? Or do we need it? Things like that. Things are traded all the time, and it was great.
Yeah.
It was great, and it opened up a lot of other doors. And some of it was the air show stuff. It just you meet people, and all of a sudden you're in aviation is a very small field. So once you get in, all of a sudden you find out you know a lot of people, and you meet people that know everybody else. And I think there's only about 200,000 licensed pilots in the United States. So it's not a big field. Not that I know every pilot, but once you start getting into that field, museums, air shows, things like that, it gets pretty small pretty quick.
Yeah. There's this guy that you mentioned, Admiral Nimitz, and the aircraft is named after,
Yes.
the aircraft carrier rather.
Chester Nimitz.
Just a little bit of a side story, because I got to say a few side stories every so often. Admiral Nimitz was close friends with a cartoonist, and hardly anybody knows this. There was a guy named Walt Munson who did these beautiful postcards in the 30s and 40s, and he was also the editor for Navy magazine.
Okay.
And I guess somehow he got connected with Nimitz, and they had this great correspondence, pen pals. And Nimitz even invited Walt Munson to his daughter's wedding.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if Munson got to go, but part of the reason I mentioned that is Walt Munson was a Connecticut resident, lived in West Haven, New Haven, and did sports cartoons for the New Haven Register. So I had just got that in there for the Munson relatives out there.
Well, it was interesting when we did get on board the Nimitz. Right at the back of the plane, just before we went into the island, which is the tall part of the carrier, Captain Ring, John Ring, was there shaking everybody's hand. There's a picture that I have of that. And he shook everybody's hand as we got off. We went right down to his cabin. They had, and it's nice. It's wood. It's not some metal little box thing.
Nice.
The minute I walked in, I spied his desk. Now everybody's going over here to this little area where there's hors d'oeuvres and stuff. And there's a map of the Battle of Midway. Underneath his glass desk is his tabletop. And and I know it was probably a copy of it, but it was a battle that was drawn up like 2 weeks after the battle to remember what the whole map was. And I couldn't wait to get over on that side of the desk, but I had to wait till we were almost finished before I could go talk to him about that. Yeah, you spy stuff, and they've got his uniform there and things like that. But it was we met the Admiral, Admiral William Byrne.
Yep.
One of the most gregarious persons I've ever met. Just the kind of guy you want to be around. Now, granted, he wasn't ordering me around, so maybe that wasn't.
Yeah, well,
but
that's different. Yeah.
The kind of guy you go to the ends of earth for. He was really, really sharp, and enjoy talking to him every time we talked to him. So.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful life experience.
Yeah. Well, the captain runs the ship.
Yeah.
The admiral runs a task force, which is 4 or 5 ships, including the Nimitz. So he's not involved with the carrier operations. He's involved with overall operations. So he doesn't tell the captain, I want to go over there. He doesn't do that.
Also, that's where admirals go.
Yes, they do.
Because I thought they were all in like Washington and Annapolis.
No,
I didn't know there's actually an admiral on the ships.
Well, as a matter of fact, the captain, John Ring, January 1st, he was heading to the Pentagon. He was leaving the Nimitz. His replacement, who I unfortunately can't remember his name, was there for about 2 months getting the feel for everything, and now he's the captain of the Nimitz. But Admiral Byrne, Rear Admiral Byrne, is still there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, there's another thing that's military about you, this vehicle that you have. It is a Jeep.
Yes.
I've seen you in this Jeep. And is this a World War II Jeep, a Korean War Jeep, or just a Jeep?
Yes and no.
All right, tell us about it.
Everybody thinks it's a World War II Jeep, military Jeep.
Yeah.
It's not. It's about as close as you can get. It's a 1945 CJ2A. In 1945, they built about 1,824 of them. In 1946, they built 60,000. There's only about 30 1945 CJs, civilian Jeeps, that exist. And only 3 of them are in the condition that mine are in, where they're original and unrestored and driving. They're a little scruffy looking, but it's in and of itself, most people wouldn't think it's that rare. But in the Jeep world, it's actually pretty rare.
Yeah, sounds it.
And it's all original, and I just keep it running, and I love driving it. If it's a nice day out, even in the middle of winter, like today, if I was home, and it was nice, I would have taken it out today and driven it a little bit because I like to drive it. So I don't winterize it. I don't put it up on blocks for the winter and all that. I like driving the Jeep, and it's just a lot of fun. I've given lots of rides. People love coming, and it's. I didn't intend to get something as rare as this. It's a Jeep. It happened, and there it was, and I was able to pick it up. very early. I had bought one Jeep, matter of fact, from Jim Nankin in town.
I know Jim.
Yes, he had a CJ, a 46 CJ. And I bought that. Within 2 weeks, I found this other one. And I ended up selling Jim's the next year to a man in Florida. And then I had this one. There's no rust on it. It's all original. I like original stuff. It's a lot of fun. I've had 8 Jeeps since. I got Woody in October 2001. And I've had 8 different Jeeps since, and I still have Woody. So.
And you have Jeep enthusiast friends.
Oh, lots.
Who also have Jeeps.
Yes.
And you go places like Historical Society and park your Jeep out.
Yeah,
and
we'll
have,
go
like,
somewhere. We'll say, well, let's. Well, one time we met up at Meriden Mountain in the park up there, and then we all met. Hung around for about an hour. Then we drove up to the top. Then we went to Blackie's. And there were 7 or 8 of us, and it was just it was just a lot of fun.
Different than motorcycle groups. Yeah.
Yes, but I've driven it as far as Kent. It's a long ride, but they have a farm machinery show there, and this was designed as a farm Jeep. It was designed to have plows and furrows and all kinds of farm implements put on it. After the war, it ended up not being as good as a tractor, but they saw it as you could plow your field and then go to church on Sunday. But it's not that, but it sure is a lot of fun. And I never. Most people want an Army Jeep.
Yep.
Most guys were Army Jeep. I will never get rid of this. I'll give it to my grandsons. It's just that much fun, and I like the history of it, and it's just great.
Well, I'm a former board member of the Naugatuck Historical Society, and they would love to have your Jeeps come up there and just park and have people come visit them.
We'll
how do we get in touch with you? I mean, I know how to get in touch with you. How about if somebody views this thing?
They can email me, if they have a Jeep question. Matter of fact, Tom Lewick at the high school, he just got a Jeep from his dad, an old one that his dad had for years, and he gave it to him. We started talking Jeeps, and he didn't realize how much I knew about Jeeps. So, but it's Airedales at att.net, AIRDALES at att.net, and we get together every now and then. We'll all go and we'll go to a car show, because if you don't see many Jeeps at car shows,
right? Yeah.
And so you tend to be the ugly red-headed stepchild, so to speak. But all the kids, I let them climb in it because it's not a showpiece.
Right.
I like to show it off. I don't, so they climb in it, and sometimes I put eyes in the windows, like Sarge from Cars.
Oh yeah.
And oh my God, the kids love it. I just made those eyes in Photoshop and put them in. But
nice.
I can't drive that way. But
no, that would not be a good idea.
Yeah.
Now let's see, what else should we talk about? I know that you've been in video, and that might be fun to talk about, but I want to make sure we talk about what you want to talk about. So is there anything that we didn't get to that you want to bring up?
It's just, love video, did a lot. That opened doors too. Have been places that, you wouldn't think you would get to go behind the scenes on things. Bell towers at Harkness, tower at Yale. Well, how are you going to invite yourself up there? Well, no, you're doing a piece on Yale, and next thing you know, you're up there, and it was fun. So that opens a lot of doors. I think that the aviation stuff is really, and the military stuff really gets my blood going. And early on, and as a child, you start thinking about, well, like airplanes, these are cool, tanks, airplanes and stuff. But as I got older, and you go to an air show, you'd sit there, watch a show, and go home. I wanted more than that, and I started hanging around. And next thing you know, someone invited me into the tent, and I said, "Well, I'm not. Just come on and have some chicken." Next thing you know, I'm a member of the group, and you're doing this, and it ends up being the people, and the airplanes are just the catalyst for meeting some really terrific people and some famous people. I've had dinner with Scott Crossfield, who was who broke Mach 2 record, flew the X-15, Douglas Skyrocket. Chuck Yeager I've met a couple of times. Bob Hoover, who was flying next to Chuck Yeager when he broke the sound barrier and took the famous picture of the airplane. It's just the doors that have opened that way for me as an aviation guy have been amazing. Yeah. Just standing at Edwards Air Force Base, you need to get special permission to get on the base. Never thought that would happen. Next thing you know, I'm standing by the pit where the X-1 was loaded into the B-29 to go up and break the sound barrier. It's still there. It's in a parking lot now. They don't park airplanes anymore, but there it is. And I'm very keyed into being somewhere where history was. And I can kind of think about that. Poncho's Happy Bottom Riding Club, which was where, if you're familiar with the Right Stuff at all, that's where all the test pilots went It was the bar and a little hotel in the desert. And there's just ruins there now, ruins of some of the buildings and the pool and things. But who gets to go there? Because it's not only is it on Edwards Air Force Base, but it's at the far end of a gun range. So the gun range has to be cleared.
Yep.
And then, so we went as a part of our dinner at the air show in Lancaster. And we went there first at sunset. And here I am where, very famous test pilots and stuff. Most people wouldn't know them. They know they heard Chuck Yeager, maybe Bob Hoover. But for me, that was Mecca. And matter of fact, the air boss I work with a lot, his name's Ralph Royce. He's a man of lots of words, okay? And he's loud. He's from Texas. He's loud. He's a Texan all the way. He was standing next to me, and he said, very quietly, "This is really something." And the way he said it was, and for aviation people, it was.
Yeah.
It was. So things like that open up. You can rides and things. I've been in every American bomber that's flying from World War II. I've flown in a P-51 Mustang in my uncle's colors. He was killed in World War II. And over my uncle's house, over my house, over Cheshire, in a P-51 with my uncle's wings.
Nice.
That are now worn by my nephew, who's flying Black Hawk helicopters. We gave him those when he got his wings in October.
Yep.
And he didn't think he was going to get them, and he's now flying with my uncle's World War II wings.
Excellent.
So all these little things come into play.
Quite
so
a story.
It's great. But no, most guys are very transportation oriented. Cars, truck. I'm into trains.
Yeah.
Trains are. My grandfather, I'm named after him. He was vice president of the New Haven Railroad. And so railroad's in my blood, and a couple of years ago I finally got to drive a steam locomotive.
Wow.
And
you are really a transportation dude.
Yeah, but that was, it wasn't so much transportation as who gets to do that.
Yes.
And I like experiences. Aerobatics, I've flown balloons, aerobatics. The only thing I haven't flown in is like a high-performance jet or a blimp. And I missed my blimp opportunity.
Oh, you got to do that. But
I do.
I have to cut you off because it's time.
Wow.
And you didn't get to whistle. Give us a bird whistle. He's a great whistler.
Well, let's see.
All right. We're done. We're out. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming, Jerry.
Thanks for having me, Ron.
Okay. Bye-bye.